I graduated in 2002 from high school. So my senior year, the big thing in my senior year was about a month into it. September 11th happened, and remember real vividly sitting in classroom, and we had closed circuit TVs. They run the morning announcements and stuff like that on there, and all of a sudden they popped on. And usually that only happened if there was some kind of emergency and need to let everybody know. And popped on and immediately showed, the tower billowing with smoke. And not even 30 seconds after the classroom quieted down and realized what was going on, and you saw the second plane come in. This girl at my school's sister worked at the towers, and she was fortunate enough to have a sick child that morning and was running late to work, so never made it to the towers. But the family couldn't get a hold of her for a couple of days because the phone lines were tied up, and that was a big impact. And so got done with football season, realized that I wasn't really going to be able to play for any coaches or schools that I wanted to play for, and so started thinking about my future, and walked into a Marine Corps recruiting station. And from there I was hooked, completely sold. My family, rich history of service to the country, but grandfather that lied about his age to fight in World War II. My dad's stepdad gave up a double sports scholarship to Ohio State to fight in World War II. My mom and then my dad's uncle was a Marine in World War II. My mom's uncle was a Marine in Vietnam. So it was something important to me. Giving back to the community was always something that I've always tried to strive for. But it was just something about walking the recruiting station and seeing there was a sense of a higher purpose. And so I enlisted. Went through boot camp, through my follow-on school, and got stationed out in El Paso, Texas, in an Army Air Defense Center as part of the Stinger School, Stinger Missile School out there. And unfortunately, an aggravating knee injury from boot camp, and then re-injured the knee, and then caused back injury later on in training, and I wasn't able to fulfill my 4 years, which is something this day that I still regret. I'm very, very proud that I made the decision to join, and very proud that I've earned the title Marine. Probably only other title that I've ever held that's more important to me than Marine is Dad. And so, unfortunately, I didn't get to do much, so I feel by comparison to some of my colleagues and friends and stuff like that, I don't really deserve the accolades that a lot of people do. One thing that did come out of it was my younger brother decided to join as well, and he did full 4 years, 2 tours in Iraq. My parents always joke one of the few positive influences I've had on him, but it's something that I still hold dear to me today, and that's the title Marine, and the importance that veterans and those that have gone before us in service of our country have in my heart. Drives a lot of the things that I do here. The price of freedom, and the term freedom isn't free, is thrown around a lot. My first experience with that thought process and with that understanding was, I want to say, maybe 3rd grade. Did a report on one of my grandfathers, and learned about his military service in World War II. Got up a nice little board and had his medals and stuff. It was really cool, and he did that for me. It was pretty cool. But I remember saying something about being a hero, and his response to me struck me, and it still hits me this day. And he goes, "I'm not a hero." He goes, "I just did what I thought was right. The heroes are the ones that didn't come back." And being in third grade and growing up with a mom and dad that had the utmost respect for the military and always taught you that these guys are heroes, that kind of struck me. It was counter to what I was always learned. And not too long after that, my other grandfather said pretty much the same thing. And then as I got older, I started hearing that a lot. And until you serve, you don't really understand that mentality. But it's absolutely correct. Not to take away from anybody that has served and survived, injured, uninjured, combat or no combat. Yeah, they're all heroes, but their response to you is, "I'm not a hero. The heroes are the ones that didn't come back." So when I knew that this interview was happening and it was about the price of freedom, I thought it'd be easier to show you instead of talk to you about it. So with your indulgence, this is Corporal Nicholas Levis from Hamilton, Ohio. Nick's father was former mayor, lawyer. He signed up after high school, knowing that we were fighting two wars. He gave it all on the battlefield. That's the price of freedom. This is Lance Corporal Michael Cifuentes, Fairfield, Ohio. He was a member of the Columbus Reserve Unit that was well known around this area for the dramatic losses that they took. Michael, I met him at infantry school, and he was also a well-loved substitute teacher at Talawanda Middle School in Oxford, where at the time, whenever he was a substitute teacher, my sister, my cousin, went. He lost his life in Iraq. That's the price of freedom. Lance Corporal Taylor Przinsky, Fairfield, Ohio. His picture is being held by his father, John Przinsky, who's also a veteran himself. Taylor lost his life in service of our country. It's the price of freedom. But more amazingly, and on top of that, his father, John, has started a movement in the area, serving veterans and their families and helping them out. He could have shelled off the world. He could have, been in misery and depression the rest of his life for the loss of his son. And he still misses his son, but he's using his firsthand experience in this situation to help others that are going through the same thing. And it was because of that that I became friends with John. And John's impact on our community with the veteran families in Southwest Ohio, I'd be willing to say that's the price of freedom as well. And then this is obviously just a tiny little fingerprint of Butler County, but this last one was especially close to me. This is Army Sergeant Tony Vintage. I went to school with Tony. He was a year ahead of me in high school. I had no idea he even joined until I ran into him in El Paso, Texas, just a few short years before he lost his life in Iraq. Whenever I showed up at his funeral, I had explained to his mom, I said, I lost track of Tony after he graduated, being a year older than me, but I said I reconnected with him for about 20 minutes. We just ran into each other at the PX Fort Bliss. And that 20-minute conversation, being in El Paso, Texas, almost on the other side of the country, with someone from back home, is a conversation and a moment that I'll never forget. And for that, I consider him a hero. Tony was a good man and a good friend. That's the price of freedom. I mean, there's millions more that you could say that about. On the wall behind me is the Honor and Remember concert that an organization started here in Ohio put on for Honor and Remember flags, and every year I sponsor to help buy a flag for a family. The price of freedom is, you can't put a value on it. It's the men and women who bled and died across the world for the idea that's America. It's the tears that are shed by the wives and the moms of those lost ones. It's the stories being told to kids as they grow up because they were too young to even remember who their dad or mom was. That's the price of freedom.